My wife was recently contacted by her ex-boyfriend/co-writer, and I've grown a bit nervous. Hello everyone, let me first start by saying that my wife and I are very open, maybe way too open about our past and past partners and all that. She is my second wife. My first wife was big on fidelity and we broke up over her cheating. The ex and I share a son. My wife also has a daughter of her own from a previous marriage. We've been married for 5 years and our little blended family works well together. TLDR, wife's ex-boyfriend messages my wife about a writing project they worked on years ago. She cheated on her ex-husband with this man about a decade ago. I'm worried old habits will repeat. As I mentioned earlier, we are perhaps too open about our past relationships. Her first husband was a serial cheater. He was a musician and slept around with women from his gigs. She stumbled onto his emails only to learn that he was involved with 5 other women, one of which he gotten pregnant. Not wanting their child to grow up in a broken home, she wanted to save the relationship and reached out to one of her old internet friends for advice. We'll call him Chris. The two had been friends for 7 years up until that point, but had never met. They were writing partners. In fact, before they lost contact, they had been writing a novel together. She tells me that when she reached out for support, he was very kind and had actually been recommending a lot ways to get past infidelity or what you should speak to attorney about, in general being a good friend. Somewhere in that they decided to revisit writing their book again. According to her, they would casually flirt, but as they lived on opposite sides of the country, they had no means to act. In all this, she decided her marriage was dead and stopped trying to fix things, checked out, I guess. She and Chris expressed mutual attraction, and by the end of the year he flew out to meet her. She filed for divorce right after the affair got physical, and Chris moved later that year to be with her. To make a long story short, her daughter, who was only 5 at the time, didn't really take to him. As she says, he didn't do anything wrong, she just wasn't adjusting properly after the divorce and didn't like somebody replacing her father. My wife told him they needed to take a break due to this and due to the fact that he's a bit crass sometimes. She had only intended for it to be a short break, but he was apparently so hurt that he'd moved that far to be turned away 2 months in, and so he broke it off entirely. After months had gone by, they reconnected to try and finish their book. They began sleeping together again during this time, but it was just a physical thing. They came close to finishing the book, but she started dating me. Thus they stopped sleeping together. She felt weird about having an ex hanging around once she got in a committed relationship, and so by her own admission she stopped returning his emails, which were all book related, with the same frequency, and stopped working on it on her end so much. He grew frustrated after a few months of this and blocked her on everything. Which finally brings us to a month ago. After 4 or 5 years of no contact, he messages her out of the blue. He contracted COVID and nearly died. Chris contacted her because apparently in that time apart he rewrote the book without her contributions, managed to get published, wrote and published a sequel, and released his work came really close to not be finished if he died. He wanted to make it known that if something should happen to him, that he wanted the rights of this thing turned over to her, as she knows how it will end, and helped create the story. Fair enough, that actually sounds nice, but then they get to talking. He's apparently writing a comic adaptation, and he invited her to come on board for it. He has a lot of the art done, and she was very excited, showing me and explaining to me who all the characters were, their backstories, what she thinks he got wrong in the design. She also read the first book and is telling me which names he changed, what characters were and weren't in their version, the plot differences, and she seems to be having a lot of fun with it. I knew they wrote together, she's mentioned it before, but I had no idea they had this whole universe created. I can tell it was something that was really important to her. She seems like she might take him up on the offer, and this worries me. Every time they've worked on something in the past, it leads to sex. And there is a bit of sexual content in their writing. I'm not the jealous type, and I certainly don't want to step on a dream she had buried, but I don't want a repeat of history. I'll admit I decided to snoop their conversation, and while he seems like he's been on the level and is only really discussing the project, she's pressing for information on his personal life. I wouldn't say in a flirty way, but she asked him if he's seeing anyone now, and when he answered no, he's too busy, that relationships just get in the way, she told him he needs to get back out there. That celibacy isn't a good look on him. We're pretty open about our past sex life, so I know her ex-husband was terrible at it, and once when drunk she said of Chris, "Don't let a great fuck convince you it'll be a great relationship." How the hell do I proceed? I know she was emotionally broken by her ex-husband and that's why she cheated, but she did cheat with this man. I've met him, he seems like an on-the-level guy, but they have a history that tells me something might happen. I want to approach my wife with my concerns, but I don't want to seem like an overbearing, controlling person. I want her to have her creative outlet, because she glows in a way I've never seen before when she talks about this book I barely knew anything about. It feels like it's something that was deeply important to her that she forced not to be important. I want that for her, but I don't want their interactions to escalate into something more like they have 3 times already. Edit 1, I'm gathering info pics and screenshots of her location and speaking with a lawyer tomorrow. Edit 2, I've met with my brother's divorce attorney and we're making plans. I am documenting everything, all texts, her location, where she's claiming to go. I'm confronting her on the 2nd next month after she goes to the hotel with him. I'm making sure I have my ducks in a row and I'm trying not to ruin Christmas forever for the kids. Edit 3, the wave of suicidal thoughts have passed and I thank everyone who left kind messages for me, really got me over the hump. TLDR, they've been screwing. And we're only talking about writing as a cover for being more open. My wife's ex-boyfriend re-emerged in her life asking to work on a mutual writing project that she abandoned years ago that he's achieving financial success with now. I don't know who this woman is. The level of deception is so involved and deliberate that I'm hardly capable of comprehending that I've spent the last 6 years of my life with this person. I decided to sit down with her and talk about how I felt about the situation, that I was happy she rediscovered her old writing and expressed that it would be cool for her to explore that as a hobby or a profession as she's quite good at it and clearly enjoys it. At the time she agreed, and said that Chris, her ex being around wouldn't be a good thing, saying she was worried that he might be using this as a ploy to talk with her again. When she said these things, I was like, okay, cool, she has the same misgivings I do and she's not minimizing my feelings or calling me controlling, in fact we're on the same page. Oh, how wrong I was. That conversation should have been the end of it, but for some reason my brain started getting weird and I began thinking it was going too well. Yesterday morning when she got in the shower, I took her phone and went into it. His number was there and their entire conversation had been deleted. It hadn't been 3 days prior. Red flags. Checked. Facebook Messenger, she's talking about her upcoming trip for work which takes her to Vegas. Well, apparently this 2-day-long thing has been canceled due to COVID, but she's been telling me she's going. They're discussing a hotel a town over and staying there as well as sending each other people's vacation photos of Vegas so she'll have stuff to show if I ask. She's talking about restaurants they can go to, how there will be a full moon when he's here, and it would look great on the beach. Oh yeah, and he's not on the East Coast as he presented, he moved back to town recently since the prick actually has enough money to live here. He showed her on Google Maps where he's living and it's taking everything I have not to drive my truck straight into his living room. A month ago she claimed that she had to pick up her brother from the airport. Nope. That was him. The messages don't go back much further than that, but they reference talking about stuff during the years they supposedly haven't had contact. One line I read that he wrote has my heart racing with such fucking madness is from him. Yeah, we're just friends. I don't see you in 8 years and I'm inside you 20 minutes off the plane. Best friends maybe. So she's not just planning to fuck him, she's been doing it for months. That trip to her mother's a few weeks back where she stayed the night, yeah. I haven't confronted her yet, but her smile fills me with so much hate now. I'm going to try my best and hold back on saying anything until after Christmas. The kids don't need the holiday being a constant reminder of this, but honestly I'm probably gonna snap and confront her today or tomorrow because my ability to swallow this bullshit with a smile is almost impossible. Honestly, I'll be lucky if I can avoid taking a bath with the toaster. I'm losing my mind right now. Update: I'd like to thank everyone who offered advice when I first posted this yesterday. It helped keep my mind away from darker places and it gave my hands something to do. I've been talking with my brother for support and have continued to monitor their communications. She noticed me acting different and I told her it was just me having the blues over the anniversary of my aunt's death, which was enough so she didn't start realizing I know all I know. I spent 3 hours today in my car outside of a McDonald's using their Wi-Fi to access her emails, and they're using fucking Yahoo Messenger to communicate. She's on this with her tits out in a ton of pics, all of which I'm saving. Real cute, there's one with her pose with flowers I got her for her birthday. They've been sexting since like March. Some select quotes from her. I can't just start talking about the book all the time. I talked about you twice when he and I got together. If I started talking about you and the book a lot now, he's gonna think something is up. You need to shave because that stubble is like knives. Almost had to put chapstick on my chin and under my nose. From him, you're getting it right before you leave here. I wanted to kiss you after you spent the afternoon swallowing me. Honestly, my compulsion not to beat this man to death is strong. I won't do it, but the fact that he's so purposefully vicious is making me want to wear his teeth as a necklace. A heads up, I began writing this the day it happened and I'm not rewriting it, so if some of my feelings don't reflect exactly what my comments were saying in the last couple of days, that's why. I've got some work to do today, so I might not respond to anything for quite some time. TLDR, I confronted her, she tried to lie, presented evidence, still tried to lie, she's currently staying at her parents' and trying to lie. I never want to go through anything like this ever again. This was the single most difficult thing I've ever had to do, and I'm twitching like a tweaker every so often now. She left for either work or Chris's today, not really sure where she went, but she was gone. Tried to check her location and either she turned off locations or my phone was giving me issues. I didn't have the means to serve her, that comes later this week, but I had to confront her before she realized what I was doing so she wouldn't have any more time to formulate some working lies. Heard my garage door opening and turned on the camera on. She comes in completely oblivious. I tell her she ought to sit down because we've got to talk. Deer in the headlights look, but she sits down and asks me what's wrong. I ask, why don't you tell me? She plays dumb, but I see she knows she's been found out. She asks me again what's wrong. I ask her what's really up with Chris. She says nothing, she hasn't heard from him. I redirect and decide to not confront her as directly and tell her that I'm uncomfortable with her working with him and that it's not something I can get past. She's 100% instantly agreeable and asks me very nervously why I changed my mind so quick and why I'm acting the way I am. I just shake my head and say something like, I wanted to be understanding about it, but I got weird vibes from him and I'd prefer they wouldn't talk. She insists that he doesn't mean anything to her anymore, that she was just happy to see the book get made. I told her that he basically stole from her and she's being way too understanding about that fact. That she ought to sue him over it, and she agrees with me. By now she's probably thinking she got out of this and is going to break it off with Chris the minute she gets a second to do so. But then I tell her the whole thing has really stressed me out and I'm going to take next week out of work. I tell her that I talked with my ex and she agreed to keep my son that weekend so I could go to Vegas with her. That's why I was talking to my ex for so long the other day, working out the details of her taking my son, or at least that's what I'd ever think. Deadpan stare. I start talking about how COVID has shut down a lot of stuff and I'm not even sure what's open in Vegas. She cuts me off and tells me that it was actually canceled today. The conversation from here on goes like this. Paraphrased, of course. Me, it got canceled last month. Her, no, he told us today because he wasn't sure whether or not it was off until today. Me, I know it got canceled last month. Her, what are you doing? Why are you telling me you want to go and then telling me it's canceled? I don't get what you're doing. Me, it was canceled last month. What were you gonna do if I didn't ask about it? Her, you're freaking me out. It was canceled today. Me, what were you going to do in town? Name where her hotel is. Her, what are you accusing me of? Me, how long have you and Chris been back together? Her, we haven't done anything. Did he tell you we were? Me, don't lie to me. I don't want read off everything he texted. It almost made me throw up doing it the first time. I can't believe you do this. Her, I love you, I'm sorry, he's been texting me a lot lately and saying a lot of messed up stuff and I don't know how to deal with it. I wanted to tell you this, but I was afraid you'd do what you're doing now. I was just hoping he'd stop on his own. Me didn't see him for 8 years and 20 minutes after he got off the plane you had sex with him. Her what plane? What are you reading? Me he lives on street name, you want to stop this? Just admit what you did so we can move forward with this. Why did you tell me he lived in East Coast? Her did he say something to you? He lies constantly, it's part of the reason why we broke up. I told you that. I knew I shouldn't have responded to his messages, it's always drama with him. All his messages were fine, but he started with the missing me stuff again, like always. I was going to tell you. Me he wanted you to come home and kiss me after you were going down on him. I read your messages, I saw them in your email and in your texts. You're cheating on me and I want you out of this house today. Her what? I'm not cheating on you. If you don't want him around, I'll tell him to get lost, but honey, I'm not cheating on you. Is that what he told you? He's lying. Me stop it. I told you I went in your messages on your phone. You're going to get your stuff and you're going to go to your parents. I made copies of your emails and screenshots from your texts. I don't want to show them what you two say to each other, but if you're going to keep lying to my face, I will. We're done, go get your stuff. She tried even in the face of all that to play stupid and lie, but finally tired of it I broke out my copies of their texts and handed them to her. She looked at them for 2 seconds and then broke down crying hard. Like I've never seen her this devastated by anything. I even felt bad for her for a little while. She said she was sorry, that it got out of hand and she wanted to put the brakes on it, but he had gotten possessive and was threatening to expose her if she ended it with him. I told her that none of that was in their texts and that she's still lying to me. She was going to go off and spend the weekend with him. She then told me it's done between them and she'll make him go away, she won't ever talk to him again. I told her I don't care what she does, but I've been talking to a lawyer and the divorce papers will be ready soon. At this point she explodes and repeats, you've been talking to a lawyer? Like 4 or 5 times, and honestly I was ready to call the cops because she's closing in on me and really screaming now. I tell her to calm down, that I have a camera going. She then continues to break down and not resemble anyone I've ever met before. Kept saying stuff like you just planned all this out. Smiling to my face, just planning this all out. Which every time she did I responded with the same, well look at what you've been planning, and smiling to my face while you're out doing sex acts. I asked her why she'd do this to us and at first she couldn't give me a straight answer. She tried to tell me it was meaningless sex, so I responded with, oh so you ruined us for no reason then, that's great. After a bit she sort of got quieter and I don't know if she was being honest or just trying to hurt me, but apparently she really messed up with him in her eyes. She called him her soulmate and I nearly started breaking stuff. I asked her why she just didn't ditch me for him in the beginning. I would have understood then, and she says she just needed to get away from him because she knew how bad she'd look to her family if she brought him back around. Apparently they didn't like him either. She also said that she could never and can never actually be with him because her ex and daughter would fight her on this. So going back to him legitimately was never an option. She then said she was sorry and seemed to be in disbelief with how final I was with everything. She told me how much of a mistake it was, how much she would change and do whatever I wanted her to just to fix the situation. I told her no. She then told me we're getting a divorce because she can make amends for this. I told her there was nothing she could do to earn my forgiveness. I will not forgive this ever, and somehow she had the gall to be shocked by this. I told her then I opened an account in another bank and moved half from the joint account into it this morning and that the rest is hers. She can either get it herself or I can get it for her, but the account is getting closed. She just nodded along and said we probably both have to go to the bank together to close it. She went and started packing her clothes up, peacefully, crying a little and oddly enough making threats every so often that she had better not have anything missing. I let it roll off my shoulder and told her to take pics of how she left her things and daughter's things so when she comes back she'll see I didn't touch anything. Her folks had been contacted and they're in disbelief. They're both surprised that Chris is even a factor in any of this and spent time apologizing to me, and soon after she was out of my house. The next day STBX hit my phone with so many I love you, I'm sorry, we can fix this texts that I contemplated flushing my phone. I wanted to just turn it off, but my ex-wife had my son, so I needed it on just in case of an emergency or a change in plans when he was coming home. So I just started responding to her texts by sending screenshots of the worst parts of their conversation and saying nothing of my own. X returned with my son and brought dinner from my favorite Chinese place. I didn't give my son the exact reason when I told him, but he asked flat out whether she cheated because it was so sudden, and I told him he was right without elaborating. They stayed for a while before returning home, and I've just been kind of floating around the house trying to keep it together. It's like 2 or 3 days since I began writing this, and I'm off to the gym and then my lawyers. This thing is already way too long and things are updating so rapidly that I could be typing forever and never finish. My STBX's ex-husband is going to come by and collect his daughter's things, and I'll explain to her the best I can that if she ever needs me, I'm just a phone call away. I'm also contemplating telling her ex that she ran around with Chris on him as well because she said many times he doesn't know. But maybe I won't, that accomplishes nothing really. Anyway, first fight has been fought and it looks like I'm winning as much as one can win given the circumstances. Part of me wants to confront Chris, but I'm smart enough that all that would be a waste of time and energy. Time better spent working or hitting the gym or finding some way to thank my ex-wife for being an absolute MVP in my corner through this. Anyway, that's all I got for now. Sorry if this is disjointed, but it's taken me a couple days to write, and of course developments keep happening.